Hi everyone, my name is Frances. I'm here with Kenra Professional, and today we are doing a light to dark bronze balayage transformation. I'm going to be doing a little bit of highlighting and showcasing some low lighting techniques. Very excited to share with you this transformation, so let's get started. So we are about to begin her process, so I separated her hair into 4 different quadrants. We're going to just be doing a few face framing highlights right in through the front, and then the rest of the hair is going to be low lighted. We just did a very simple 4-quadrant sectioning because this is literally just going to have low lights on this side, low lights on this side, and then it's going to tie into her low lights into the front. Okay, so I'm going to start in the front right quadrant, and we're going to do just a few little face framing highlights. So I'm taking Simply Blonde Blue Powder Lightener and 20 volume. Since we're working with a natural level 3, I want to go in with the blue powder. Blue powder is actually one of my favorite lighteners to use behind the chair. It allows me to do basically everything I need. So let's do just a very soft baby light highlight in a diagonal section. For this project, we are using Simply Blonde Blue Powder Lightener with 20 volume at a 1:2 mixing ratio. And then I'm gonna just start maybe an inch away from the scalp and then just feather up. We don't want too much saturation right there. Since this area is a little finer, foils can slip very easily. So I'm just kind of creating a little feathering right at the root, and then we're gonna do the full saturation. Okay, I'm gonna do one more foil right behind that foil. And this is just gonna give her a little bit of brightness around the face. We are going darker on her, but we don't want her to look like her roots are growing out. So this will just kind of allow to do almost a little bit of a touch up so her color looks freshly done. Another back to the foil. Continuing doing baby lights around the hairline, now I'm gonna move into the money piece zone. I'm gonna start this first foil as a soft weave. This is to avoid any hard lines of demarcation when my client pulls her hair back in a ponytail. The next section is going to be a slice. I want this to tie into a stronger, bolder money piece. And then we're gonna do slight back combing to create a little bit of diffusion or get rid of all those flyaways right at that root. And when I do my application, I'm gonna still feather right at the top of the roots and then full saturation right below it. But to protect the hair, I'm gonna fold right where the lightener starts, and that way when I do this second fold, it's not gonna affect any of the pre-lightened hair. Now, if you really wanna elevate your service, I'm gonna do an over-directed tip out around the hairline. This is gonna tie into a beautiful face frame highlight. So I'm gonna grab a section in between those hairline foils, over-direct it forward, and we're gonna do a lot of back combing to make sure we get that beautiful blend. And then when I apply with my lightener, I did bring it up a little higher around that hairline. And we're gonna repeat the same pattern on the opposite side. We're gonna start in the back in her right back quadrant. And what I'm gonna do is create a zigzag. So what I'm gonna do now for this application is I'm gonna take the top of that zigzag, and that is going to be her low light. So with my Demi Fighting Way, I'm going to start where her highlights start, towards the crown. And we're going to do full saturation at the roots, full saturation through the mids, and then we're going to feather towards the end. So what I want to do is emulate the effect of a balayage. And the way we're going to do that is to leave some of her ends light. We don't want to drag this down all the way. It's going to give her, if I were to do that, it would give her a stripier effect. So this is kind of how we're going to pretend we are creating that balayage, not just adding the dark color back in. And the reason I'm using a zigzag technique for this low light application is this helps create a almost very subtle interwoven effect to her low lights, which is going to make it look the most natural, or it's just going to create a very even blend. And I'm starting where her highlights start and leaving her roots alone because we are going to go back in and base break those roots. And through the ends, I don't want to just end in a straight line, so I'm kind of dragging one side lower than the other. See, at the crown, she has a very slight line of demarcation from her previous highlight. So what I'm going to do, instead of creating the zigzag, I'm going to grab the areas that are creating that line of demarcation, and we're going to low light those. Almost creating a ribbon effect. I don't want to lose too much highlights here, so I'm not going to drag it down this far. Okay, that will be her lowlights. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Moving on to the front of the hair, we're going to continue with her lowlights. And again, we're trying to create a balayage effect, not like we're just low lighting her. So in a balayage, lightness usually comes in through the bottom. So we're gonna leave this alone. That way she still has that brightness through her ends. And I'm gonna still continue with my zigzag method. And so I'm gonna just take that top part of that low light. And so we don't lose any of her face framing. We're gonna leave that front piece alone. That way it connects to her face framing. Continue with her low lights here. Starting where her highlights left off, she has about 1.5 inches of new growth. So we're gonna leave that alone so we could lighten up her base. And same thing, full saturation in through the top, in through the mids, lightly feather in through the bottom. Let's create one more zigzag in through the middle of this section. Making sure to leave that really pretty face framing that she already has. The great thing about this, it does not have to be so strategic. The zigzag will kind of do the work for you. And as I work towards the top of the crown, I'm not going to drag that low light as far down. And that's to make sure we can still have enough highlights in there so it still looks like a balayage. So wherever I see that line of demarcation, we're gonna grab that hair. And a great viewpoint on how to decide is if I see what's left and if there's anything still creating a line of demarcation, I'm gonna pick that up. Since we're low lighting this is what is left. And if it has a blend, I know I'm good to go. So around the hairline, I almost like to bring this back section further down. And that way it actually starts connecting to her lowlights in the back. And this brighter piece we're leaving is gonna connect to her face framing in the front. So almost kind of doing a balayage in reverse by adding the lowlights in versus adding the highlights in. And we're gonna repeat the same thing on the other side. Let this process for about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, my model just has 1 more minute left of processing. So right before we rinse her and get her ready for the base breaker, I'm gonna take the areas I low lighted and now we're gonna start smudging them down. This is gonna help make sure that my darker shades are blending more evenly, more smoothly, and it's gonna give just the overall transition a softer appearance. So we're gonna blend, smudge down. It's gonna ensure a very pretty blend and transition, and let this sit on for another 30 seconds to a minute, just enough for it to blend out, and then rinse. We're gonna shampoo and get her ready for the base breaker. Now going in with my base breaker formula. This is Base Breaker Extra Cool. So my model is a natural level 3, I would say, between a 2 and a 3. And we did her lowlights with a 5. And what we're gonna do with the base breaker is we're gonna aim to shift her base 2 levels lighter than her natural. This is just gonna create a softness at the roots. It's gonna create a softness in her transition from top to bottom, especially when we're working with such darker levels. Sometimes those clients of ours, they just want a little bit of softness in through this area. It's just 2 levels lighter, so she will not get a strong line of demarcation as it grows in. And since we are working with that dark level 2 base, I chose the Extra Cool Base Breaker because it will combat the warmth as much as possible. This sits on for about 5 minutes, and that way, when it's ready to rinse, I can start in the back and rinse forward. So just starting my application in the back, working my way forward. We're gonna process this for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll get ready for toning. So we shampooed out her lowlights and highlights. I used the Triple Repair shampoo to get her hair ready for toning. So I'm gonna be spraying on the Kenra Color Equalizing Spray. This serves as a great detangler. It also helps balance the pH of the hair, so our toner application will be applied very evenly. For our all over Demi Formula, we are using 7RB, 6C, 8GB at a 1:2 mixing ratio with 9 volume. Okay, so we're gonna start at the top where her highlights are leaving off. I'm gonna start applying her all over toner. And I'm just gonna start in the back and work my way forward. And sitting next to me, I also have her root shadow formula. We're gonna do a root melt for those face framing highlights that we did. But I'm also going to have the root shadow ready back here in case there's any areas I do wanna add a little bit more depth. So here is the Demi 5-in Way. I'm just gonna melt that down and almost do like a toner overlay, overlaying her highlight toner. With the palette brush, I make sure that this is distributed evenly, brushing all the way through. Okay, so moving on to the front, now I'm actually gonna do a root shadow melt for those face framing highlights that we did. I'm gonna just do a light root tap around the hairline. And this is not going to disturb the base breaker at all. It's actually gonna blend in naturally into it. Then with a wide tooth comb, I'm gonna make sure I melt this down, push the color in. Now I'm grabbing my Bronde all over toner. And Bronde is a term that was basically explaining how blonde meets brunette. And this is great for your clients that actually wanna live in that warm family. And then we're gonna repeat the same method on the other side, just root tap around the hairline for the root shadow. And then with my brush, we're gonna make sure to melt that color down. This is gonna sit on for a total of 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're gonna rinse and get her ready for styling. Here is the end result to our Bronde balayage transformation. Just to do a little recap, we just did 4 face framing highlights on each side. We had 1 tip out on this side, 1 tip out on this side, and that created this ribbon of color that you see framing the face. We did a base breaker just to lift her natural roots, just 2 levels. Beautiful end result. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more educational videos from Kenra.